When I was a kid, and I mean like a really young kid, one of my favourite games to play was Puzzle Bobble on the PC. It's probably because of how easily accessible Puzzle Bobble is to someone unfamiliar with games in general. It's a simple match 3 puzzle game where a number of coloured balls are coming down from the ceiling and it's up to you to pop them by matching 3 or more of the same colour by shooting them from the bottom of the screen. Now, over the years we've seen many incarnations of this formula come out across many different consoles, and Puzzle Bobble itself remains to this day a bit of a household name, especially if you were playing games in the PS1 and PS2 era. I know that over here it was called Bust a Move and the PS2 version had that baby cover. Is that cover great or is it terrible? Debatable. I think it might be somehow both at the same time. But everyone who plays games either knows the brand Puzzle Bobble, Bust a Move, or is very familiar with the concept of popping the same coloured bubbles by firing them from the bottom of the screen. So when I heard that Taito Corporation and developer Servios were making a VR version of Puzzle Bobble in the form of Puzzle Bobble VR Vacation Odyssey, I was pretty interested to see how this very popular, well-known formula would translate into virtual reality. I'm pretty new to VR, I've had a Quest 2 since Christmas, and I've been looking for different experiences to try out in virtual reality. So I've played about 5 hours of Puzzle Bobble VR, and I can say that, yeah, it's pretty good. The game's core mechanic is very similar to those original Puzzle Bobble and Bust a Move games. You shoot coloured balls to pop 3 or more bubbles of the same colour. However, in VR, instead of them coming from above, you're shooting instead at a floating 3D cluster made up of connected balls. You shoot using a slingshot, you put a coloured ball into it, you pull back on the string, and you fire it at the floating cluster. At the centre of the cluster is a core. You can pop the core and finish the level once there's either one or fewer bubbles still connected to it. And in general, it's fun. Gameplay is pretty much the same as it was in those original games, and it's a pretty timeless mechanic. There's something immensely satisfying about popping huge amounts of the same coloured bubble, and, there's really nothing quite like finding those connector bubbles and popping them and watching all of the other bubbles attached to them fall away, or in this case float away. That's one of the best things in gaming, really, is disconnecting something in Puzzle Bobble, if you know what I mean. There's loads of different variations of the clusters themselves. Sometimes they even have multiple cores or multiple clusters. You have to kind of micromanage multiple ones at the same time in some of the game's more challenging levels. There are even special bubbles that can change the colours of the balls around them when a colour is popped next to them, ones that will pop all of the same colour across all of the different clusters. It's very similar to the original game in terms of that core gameplay mechanic. You can even buy power-ups, sort of like power-ups you'd see in free-to-play mobile games, but you unlock them with in-game currency, but they are priced a bit weirdly. You get about 8 coins for finishing a level, and you can unlock one of the 3 power-ups with 150 coins, and then buy additional ones with 20 coins. You don't really need them. If you want to get 3 stars on each level, you may need to rely on 1 or 2 here or there, but in general, I didn't really use the power-ups. However, they are quite fun. There's a bomb power-up where you have to eat a chili which makes you breathe fire, then you lean in to set the bomb on fire, then pop the bomb into your slingshot and fire it, and there's something quite nice about that tactility to power-ups that makes them quite fun. In general, gameplay is pretty good. There's something to it that is quite Moorish. However, it's not perfect. It's quite finicky to a fault at times. Although you have this slingshot that's permanently in your non-dominant hand, when you pull back the string and aim at the cluster, the location where the ball will hit is kind of static. So you get this issue sometimes, especially when the cluster is moving, where it'll flicker, and when you actually fire the ball, it might never actually hit where you want it to, which is incredibly frustrating, especially on levels where you have a time limit to destroy the cluster, or even on the standard levels where you only have a certain number of balls to fire. So yeah, that was a bit annoying. And also, although it uses the medium of virtual reality very well, there's some physicality to the slingshot, and it actually uses depth really well, especially when there's multiple clusters above you, below you, in the distance. I just kind of wish it went a few steps Further, you have this cluster that's in 3D space, and every time you hit it, it spins. The cluster reacts in the way you would expect it to when you fire something at it. However, I kind of wish you could walk around the cluster. Even if you were to teleport to different areas around it, I just think that being able to move around in the physical space to get underneath it, to look around it, to try and find the best place to shoot the balls, would have been more interesting a mechanic. Instead, you just kind of have to shoot at what's in front of you, and sometimes you just can't make a shot that makes sense, which I guess is part of the game, but in a virtual reality game, you kind of expect to be able to use your entire body to interact with the world, right? There's some puzzles in Half-Life Alyx that allow you to grab something in front of you, to twist it, to look at it from different angles. I just kind of wish it had something similar to that. Maybe they'll add that in a later update. I don't know. VR games, in my experience, are normally pretty good at adding additional content over a large period of time, so you never know. There are 3 modes at launch to play around with. There's a story mode, which isn't really a story. You get these static images on the screen that you can cycle through, which is a bit like, okay, it's not really using virtual reality in a meaningful way, but that's fine. However, there are 100 levels to work through, which is a substantial amount of content really, especially when you're rated out of 3 stars for each one, and it's not that easy to get 3 stars, so there's plenty of replay value in that mode alone. However, I do think the game's best mode is its online multiplayer mode, a duel mode. It has full online matchmaking, or you can play with friends, and basically you and another player have to try and destroy as many clusters that appear in front of you before one gets sucked into this giant, horrific black hole that's in the sky. Whoever doesn't pop them quick enough, whoever is the first to let one of these clusters go into the hell portal, they lose, and the other player wins. You can send additional stuff across to each player, a bit like in things like Tetris 99 or Pac-Man 99, and it's really tense and really, really fun, trying to pop these clusters, trying to beat the other player, constantly being able to look to your right to see what the other player is doing, and they'll do the same to you. They'll glance over to see what you're doing, and you can give them a little wave at the end of the match, which I really, really like. It took me a while to find other players. I understand why. This isn't really a mainstream game, but I still managed to find players quite regularly, even at random times. 10 on a Saturday morning, there were people playing. It took about 3 minutes to matchmake. It was a bit quicker on a Saturday afternoon, but dual mode is a particular highlight, and I think I will be coming back to it to play online multiplayer, which I didn't expect from a Puzzle Bobble game, but there we are. And finally, there's an infinite mode, which is exactly the same as the online multiplayer mode. You just play it by yourself. You just have to try and destroy as many of these clusters as possible before they get sucked into the sky and you lose. And it's quite fun. It's quite fun to play by yourself. It's quite fun to try and rack up some high scores, and you can jump into it pretty quick, although loading times in this game in general can be a little bit on the long side. So overall, I did like this. I kept playing it despite its flaws. It's very basic. You know, its graphics are pleasant and friendly enough, but I can't say that it's very immersive. All of the locations that you're in are very static, and some of the areas are filled with static animals that just kind of stare at you, and it's a bit like, oh, okay, this is weird. But the animation work on your buddy is very nice. Music is pretty rancid, I must admit, although it does use sound effects from the original Puzzle Bobble and Bust-A-Move games, so that's quite nice and nostalgic. Now you're probably wondering, Liam, why did you review this? Normally I like to gush and enthuse about the games that I've been playing, and well, I think I wanted to talk about it because this is maybe one of the first examples I've come across of a non-premium game on what feels very much like a premium platform. What do I mean by that? So most games I play on my Quest feel like they've been tailor-made for virtual reality. Things like Beat Saber, Pistol Whip, Super Hot VR. These are games that use every facet of virtual reality to immerse you in their worlds and to give you a gameplay experience that can't be achieved anywhere else. And Puzzle Bobble VR feels like it could have been on the Nintendo Wii. Puzzle Bobble VR is a good Puzzle Bobble game. It's a unique and fun twist on a very classic and indeed aging formula. But as a VR-only game on the Quest, for me, this kind of signifies potentially a bit of a turning point for the platform. This game did not need to exist. It's releasing for a platform that is still really, really niche. Not many people own virtual reality headsets, but here's a game that you'd kind of expect to release on a console with a far larger player base. And as I was playing it, I kept thinking to myself, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe this is signifying that the tide is changing when it comes to virtual reality. Maybe the popularity of the Quest 2, which has sold extremely well, is resulting in more developers and and more publishers taking risks and bringing titles to the platform. Maybe Puzzle Bobble VR is a pretty average game, but maybe the mere fact that it exists is proof that virtual reality headsets are finally breaking through into the mainstream. This isn't a niche premium experience for a very niche premium console. This feels like, well, it feels like Wii shovelware. And it's good, don't get me wrong, but super hot this ain't. And I kind of love that. I love that we're reaching a point where virtual reality, something I still find so futuristic every time I put on that headset, it feels like I'm stepping into science fiction. The fact that it's starting to receive titles that are making it feel more mainstream, it's cool. It's really, really cool. So yeah, I enjoyed Puzzle Bobble VR Vacation Odyssey. Do I think it's worth £15? Not really. I think if you're after a fun, light-hearted puzzle game, I'd maybe wait for a sale. But it's here, I had fun playing it, and it really made me have a long think about virtual reality headsets, the popularity of the Quest, and what it means for the future of the medium in general. And if we get more games like this, I kind of feel like maybe it's doing better than most of us even realise. So yes, I think Puzzle Bobble VR Vacation Odyssey is good. It's fine. And, it's there, it exists, it's good stuff. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this rambly review, please do consider giving this video a like. And if you could subscribe to the channel, that would be really appreciated. I put new videos on this channel every Sunday at 4 PM. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you very, very soon.